Hey guys, and welcome to the Kurima Podcast, where we talk about business, finance, entrepreneurship, and real estate. I'm your host, Jason Kurima, and I have a very special guest today, Rick Pearson. Rick, it's a pleasure to have you, man.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So Rick has an incredible story about how he felt a calling from God to start this ministry on Table Rock, and let's just dive into that. It's incredible, man. I love that story.
Well, I love to tell it because it's God's story. Sometimes people say, "Tell us your story," and I'm like, "Okay," but it's really God's story. It really is. So, as we were talking a little earlier, I guess I'll just start at the beginning. I accepted Christ in my life as a 7-year-old little boy. I remember my mom kneeling with me at our couch in Chamberlain, South Dakota, where we were living at the time, and I accepted Jesus into my heart. Unfortunately, there was a time during my teenage years when I really drifted away from God. And, at that time, from junior high on in my life, we lived in a little town in southwest North Dakota. There was no such thing as a youth group or a youth pastor or anything like that. And I really lacked direction. My mom was a wonderful, beautiful Christian lady who loved the Lord and did her very, very best to lead us 4 kids towards Christ. And there were 4 of us. I'm the oldest of 4, and my youngest brother is not even 4 years younger than me. So we were all really compacted together. My father was a pretty unstable guy, and we moved all the time. In fact, from the time I was born till I entered the 7th grade, we moved 15 times.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is. And so I know what it feels like to be that kid that is just always trying to fit in, and trying to find his place and just never feeling really secure, So during my teenage years, I drifted away from God and went off to Mid-America Nazarene College after graduating high school, and only stayed 1 semester. It just wasn't for me. I didn't have any direction in my life. I went to college with this idea. You know what? I'm going to find a girl. I'm going to get married. I'm going to settle down and never move again. I'm going to have stability in my life. I just want things to be normal and secure. And anyway, so I did find a girl. And we did get married, and we moved back to North Dakota, which she hated with all of her heart. She was from Topeka, Kansas, and I was from the frozen tundra, and she hated it there so bad. And so we ended up moving to Topeka, where she was from, where we started attending a little Nazarene church there called Oakland Church of the Nazarene. And it was there at 20 years of age when God got a hold of my heart again. And I'll never forget that Sunday when I made my way down to that altar and just cried my heart out to God. And I remember feeling so surprised that He would forgive me and take me back. I'd done so many wrong things, so many stupid, sinful things. And but He did. He took me back, and I was just so excited, and my life just dramatically changed. And it wasn't very long after that when I felt God call me into ministry. And so the youth pastor in the church there said, "Hey, you want to help out with the youth group? It seems like anybody that just came to the Lord and came to the church, let's get them to help in the youth group because they always need help, right?" It seemed like it. And so I said, "Yeah, that sounds cool." And I was just so excited about what Jesus had done in my life. And basically, I was just barely not a teenager. I was 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I started working with them and helping out. And one day the youth pastor said, "Hey, we're going down to Table Rock Lake for our summer camp trip. You want to go as a sponsor?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty cool." So I took the only week's vacation I had the whole year from my job, and we headed off to Table Rock Lake. And I got to tell you, when you grow up in the frozen tundra of North Dakota, Minnesota, and South Dakota, I lived in those 3 states, and you go to Table Rock Lake in southern Missouri in the Ozarks in June, you feel like you have died and entered heaven, okay? I mean, it was just, oh my goodness. I was just overwhelmed with the beauty. I mean, it was just incredible. And so we're down there, and what was really ended up being more incredible than the beauty of the area was what I saw God do in the lives of those kids that week. Dang. It was incredible. I mean, it was just such a powerful setting. And we're sitting there one night having our evening service, and the youth pastor's bringing his message, and it was just this crazy experience for me. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, God told me, or I heard from God, and sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, that's good, you know, and you kind of wonder about it. And I didn't hear an audible voice that night. I'm not saying that I did, but he's up there speaking, and all of a sudden it's like his lips are moving, but I don't hear a sound. And I just feel this overwhelming voice inside of me that says, Rick, I want you to build a youth camp on this lake to reach young people for me.
You know, you felt that Holy Spirit.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what it was, the Holy Spirit speaking to me. And and the reason I was so convinced that it was the Holy Spirit and not just me was it just been really a short time, maybe a month or 6 weeks before that, when I felt God call me into ministry. And it was that same voice. It was that exact same voice in me. So I was just totally convinced, absolutely, this is God, you know. And so I was so excited, you know, when the Lord said, I want you to build a camp on this lake to reach young people for me. I was like, heck yeah, I'll do that. You know, let's get started right now. You know, this is awesome. And I was 20 years old, so excited, so exuberant. And so I was so excited that I went to the people that owned Whippoorwill Resort. That's where we stayed, a little resort called Whippoorwill Resort. And the owners were Jack and Margaret. And they were pretty elderly, at least I thought. At 20 years of age, they were pretty elderly, okay? Now, you got to understand, this is 41 years ago, okay? 41 years ago from now. And Jack just passed away this January. Margaret is still alive, okay? And so I thought 41 years ago, they're pretty elderly, you know, so they probably don't even want to run this resort anymore, right? So, you know, they've got to be like 150 years old. Anyway, today. But so I go to Jack and Margaret, and I'm like, God called me to build a camp on this lake to reach young people for him. How about you guys just give me your resort right here, and I'll start, you know, right now. And they kind of chuckled and said, no. And I think I must have kept bugging them because a little later, or the next day, Jack said, Rick, there's this property down the lake from us that I heard it's for sale, and it'd be a perfect place for you to build your camp. And I really think he was like, I got to get this kid off my back. You know, he's just like, won't shut up. So Jack and Margaret took me in their car from Whippoorwill, and we drove out on this road. I mean, it wasn't even like a gravel road. It was like the old wagon train ruts, you know, and it was a terrible, rough ride. And we drove out to this property, and we get out, and I just started walking around. And you know, it's just like jungle. It's the Ozarks, you know, it's the Mark Twain National Forest, you know, and there's just trees and undergrowth everywhere. And I'm just walking around, and I just had this overwhelming feeling, this is it. You know, I mean, sometimes I think that, you know, I heard the angels sing a little, I don't know, but, you know, it's just like, woo. And so I fought my way all the way down to the shoreline because it has lake frontage. But it wasn't easy to get to because it was like a jungle, you know. Mm-hmm. And Jack and Margaret didn't go with me because I think they were afraid of getting snake bit or something. Anyway, so I fought my way down to the shoreline, and just every foot of the way, I'm just like, this is it. This is it. And so I piled up a pile of rocks on the shore because I thought, I want to be able to find this place again, and it's got to be way easier to get out here in a boat than it is on that old rocky, rough road. So I pile up the rocks there. We go back to Whippoorwill Resort, and I asked some of the kids in my youth group if they wanted to go on a boat ride. And they're some of my leadership kids, and they're like, yeah. So I rented this old crappy boat from Jack. It barely ran. Anyway, and I said, Jack, where is this land on the lake? Can you, and he had a lake map, and he kind of showed me. I didn't know Table Rock Lake at all. I'd never been there. And do you know that there's 800 miles of shoreline on that lake? Jeez. That's how big that lake is. When crazy. You follow, all the coves and arms and everything, it's 800 miles. And I thought, I don't know if I'll ever find that pile of rocks. But we took off, and we found it.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's probably the first miracle right there. And so we get out, and we make a little cross out of sticks the best we can. We found some vines. We tied up the cross, and we stood it up in that pile of rocks.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and we held hands. We gathered around, and we prayed, God, would you give us this land for a youth camp? Well, we go back to Topeka, and after the week was over, and I am so excited. Still, I'm just beside myself. God called me to do this, and I really expected the entire world to be as excited as I was. Yeah. So I write this letter, and I send it out to everybody I ever met in my life, and the letter basically said, God called me to build a youth camp at Table Rock Lake to reach young people for Him. Send me yo money, and because this land was for sale, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to know what happened?
What?
Nothing. Dang. Not even one person sent me $1. Nothing happened. And I was so disappointed. I was like, what? God, you told me to, I'm supposed to do this. Did you forget to tell everybody else? And so anyway, I was discouraged, but I just thought, okay, I'm just gonna, keep praying and keep trusting God. I'm sure this was real, it was Him. So pretty soon, the youth pastor there, he felt a call to become a lead pastor, a senior pastor. So he moves away, and the church puts me in charge of the youth group. I didn't know anything. I did not know anything. All I knew is what God had done in my life, and that I was so in love with Jesus, and I just wanted to share that with other people. And God really blessed that. It's a whole another story how God took that youth group from about 12 kids to the point where we had 180 on our roll, and we were running over 100 in youth group on Wednesday nights. Wow, that's a whole incredible. Another story. But anyway, just amazing thing the Lord did there. Well, so I'm in charge of the youth group. Well, guess where we're going for our summer camp trip again? Every single year, back to the Whippoorwill Resort, back to Table Rock Lake. Every year, I would rent a boat, and I'd drive over, and I'd find that property, and I'd get out, and I would pray, and just, Lord, when will this happen? And did that year after year, and finally, after 8 years of doing that, I pull up there on the lake in the boat to pray over the property again, and there's a dock down there. There's a dock on my land, okay? It's not my land, but I thought it was my land. And I'm like, what is going on? Why is there a dock on my land? What's happening, And so I pulled my boat in the dock, and I walked up the hill, and I met this guy named Joe. Now, Joe was a very interesting fella, let me tell you. And I refer to him as Windy Joe, and because he was a guy that you met him, and you could tell in about 5 minutes, okay, I can't believe a word this guy tells me. I mean, he was just one. You ever met a guy like that? You're like, I really just don't think you're on the level, bro. Anyway, that was Joe. And I said, Joe, my name is Rick Pearson. God called me to build a youth camp right here. Well, what Joe had done unbeknownst to me at the time, but his father-in-law, actually in New Jersey, bought this land and that we had prayed on. And then Joe and his wife built a tiny little resort there with just like 5 little cabins. And then he would rent out those cabins to Kanakuk parents because there was a big Kanakuk camp just down the road. Mm-hmm. And so I said, Joe, God called me to build a youth camp right here. And Joe's response was this: "Oh, you religious peoples, you think you can do anything," whatever. And I quickly learned that Joe did not know Jesus. And I did try to witness to him over the years. I am sad to say I don't know how much effect it had. But anyway.
But at least you did your part.
I
right?
tried, yes.
You planted seeds. So
I did plant the seeds, yep. And Joe is now deceased. I don't know where he's at. I'm hoping I see him in heaven someday. But anyway, I said, Joe, well, I'll tell you what, I need you to contact me if you ever decide to sell this place because God told me to build a youth camp here. And he was like, "Oh, you religious peoples." So I left him my phone number. And then over the years, I spent 9 years in youth ministry in Topeka, Kansas, 2.5 in Dallas, Texas, 2.5 in Oskaloosa, Iowa, 2 years in Indianapolis, Indiana. And then I moved as a senior pastor to St. Joseph, Missouri, where I pastored for 3.5 years. And every year, no matter where I was, I took my youth group back to Table Rock Lake. I mean, that was the closest I could come, to actually fulfilling this call.
So was that 18 years or 20 years? How many years was that?
17.
17.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think if you add them up, it's supposed to come to 17. So 17 years from the time I prayed on the property until I'll tell you the rest of the story. Okay. So, I would stop in every year after 8 years, talk to Joe every year. And so I actually did that for 8 straight more years. And gave him my current phone number. And then they come out with a thing called a pager. You're too young to remember those.
I don't remember.
Yeah, if you had a pager, you were really cool. It was like this little thing went on your belt, and it would buzz if someone was calling you, and it left their phone number on a little screen there. Okay, it was high tech back then, man.
For us, it was like the Razor was the big thing around my time, I guess.
Yeah. So, that comes way later.
Yeah.
So, and I left them my pager number and my church office number, my home number, and then they got email, so I left them my email address, and then cell phones finally came out, so I left them my cell phone number. And every year, Joe, if you ever sell this place, you've got to let me know because God called me to build a camp here.
Yeah.
And every year, "Oh, you religious peoples." Well, finally, in 1997, while I was youth pastor in Indianapolis, Indiana, we founded Fun in the Sun, SON Ministries, a non-denominational, non-for-profit youth ministry organization dedicated to reaching the youth of America for Jesus Christ. And we started holding camp at Table Rock Lake. I found this right behind Baxter Marina up on the hill. There's this bluff, and there was 5 resorts up there. And we would rent those resorts out for 1 week. We'd put up a huge tent, build the stage, put the video screen, sound system, light system, everything. I mean, it took us 10 really cool. days to set this tent up to hold 1 week of camp. But we started that in 1997, and that was the closest I could come to fulfilling this call, and all this time, I'm wondering, Lord, when is this going to happen? And I think it's either 1st or 2nd Peter where it says, the Lord is not slow as we understand slowness, or whatever, but he always keeps his promises. And I was kind of doubting that a little bit. In fact, I was pretty sure that the Lord was really, on this one, he was slow. He just wasn't getting her done, Mm-hmm. But I never stopped believing. I just kept praying and kept moving forward. Well, in 1999, my daughter invites a friend from school to go to camp with her under the tent, down at Table Rock. His name was Chad. And Chad comes to camp with her. and he accepts Christ as his Savior. And it was a beautiful and amazing transformation in Chad's life. Well, Chad starts attending our church in St. Joseph, Missouri, and a year later he graduates from high school. And he invited me to come to his graduation reception party at his house. And I went, and that was the first time I'd ever met Chad's mom and dad, Dave and Terry. And Chad's dad, Dave, was just like, he was beside himself. He was so excited about the change in Chad's life, you know. And he's just like, oh, man, thank you for saving my boy, you know. And I'm like, when I've led someone to Christ and they say thank you for saving them or whatever, I always just like, whoa, wait. I don't save anybody. Jesus does that. I just do this camp thing. And his dad said, well, I want to know more about this camp thing that you're doing. So a couple weeks later, I met with Dave in his office. And Dave was... He built huge plants like Pepsi-Cola plants or Johnson Control plants, Coca-Cola plants, stuff like that. Yeah. Like 10 acres under one building, one roof. That's
crazy.
Yeah, that's what he did. And anyway, during our conversation in his office, he said this, Rick, what is your greatest need? And I said, to have a place. God has called me to do this full time in my life, but that's never worked out. I've never been able to find a place or get the place. I didn't really explain that to him, but that I felt like God had called me to build this camp. And he said, okie doke, you know what? I've got a building for sale in downtown St. Joe. And if I can sell that building for the price I'm asking, then maybe I can help you. And I'm like, oh, cool, and I was excited about that. But I also got to tell you, I was also skeptical because from the time we had made that little cross out of sticks and prayed on that property until I met with Dave in his office, 16 years has gone by.
Dang.
16 years. And during that 16 years, I'd had 2 or 3 other people say things like that to me, like, oh, yeah, you know what? I think the Lord's telling me to help you with this, or whatever. And for whatever reason, one after the other, it didn't happen. They didn't follow through. Mm-hmm. And so when Dave said it, yes, I was excited, but I was also kind of skeptical.
I've heard this one before.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I've heard this before. Well, so I leave there, his office, and we're coming up on Labor Day that fall, and Chad calls me and says, Rick, my dad's going to be at Table Rock over Labor Day. Call him up and see if he'll go look at land with you for your camp. And I said, oh, did he sell the building? And he said, no, he didn't sell it, but just call him anyway. So I call him up, and he says, yeah, let's go do that. So I met with Dave after Labor Day, and we found a realtor. And for 3 days, I rode in the back seat of this realtor's car, who should have never been granted a driver's license in the first place. Okay, I'm telling you. And down there, the roads are just like, so windy and hilly and twisty. And back in that day, I got motion sickness like you cannot believe. I mean, I literally was the color of my shirt, green, the whole time. And we went everywhere. We looked at all sorts of property. Nothing was right. Either you couldn't have a dock, or it wasn't zoned you could build a camp, or you couldn't even see the lake or something. I mean, nothing was right. And so finally, it was really at the end of the second day, I said to Dave, well, would you like to see the place where God told me to build this camp? And Dave looks at me, and Dave is such a nice guy. He really is. He is such a nice guy. And you know how people can say things without even using words? You can just tell by their facial expressions that what they're saying to you. And this was Dave. Okay, Dave didn't say a word, but here's what he said. Okay, you got to be kidding me. You're telling me this now after 2 days riding around with this crazy realtor that there's a place, And he didn't say a word, but I knew that's what he was thinking. I could tell by the look on his face. And I said, well, it's not for sale. And he said, I don't care. Let's go look at it.
Dang.
So we get in my boat in Shell Knob. We drive out to the dock. We walk up the hill, and we talk to Windy Joe. And it's the same old thing with Windy Joe, you know. Oh, you religious peoples. And so we left there, and we go back to St. Joe, and it is January of 2000, and nearly 17 years has gone by now since we prayed on that property. I'd been doing camp under the tent for 4 years. I was pastoring a church there. Things were going well in the church. I loved the people. They seemed to love me. That wasn't the issue. The issue was this calling wouldn't leave. And it literally for nearly 17 years, it wouldn't leave. And for 17 years, I prayed about it. I told everyone I ever met, everyone in Topeka, everyone in Dallas, everyone in Oskaloosa, everyone in Indianapolis, everyone in St. Joe. And I've been in ministry now for 17 years, you know, and I met a lot of people, and I told them all. God called me to build a youth camp at Table Rock Lake. Every one of them. And I was just tired. I was just discouraged. It's like, Lord, I can't keep doing this. And so I decided to do a fundraiser. And I had this conversation with the Lord. And I'm not saying this is like maybe how we should have conversations with the Lord, but I'm just being real. This is what I said. I said, God, I'm tired. I'm tired of waiting. And maybe I didn't actually hear you. Maybe it was really just me. And so God, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a fundraiser. And God, if you will raise $100,000 for us in this fundraiser, then I will know that is you telling me that I'm not to give up, that I need to keep on keeping on, that the call was real. But if we don't raise $100,000, then I'm going to know that is your sign, you telling me I missed it. And forget it. Just let it go. So, and that was hard. It was hard to even think about. Yeah. So here's what I decided to do. I sent out letters once again to everyone I'd ever met in my life, pretty much. But I've met a lot of people now. I've been in ministry a long time, and so I sent out a letter, and basically the letter said this: "This is what God has called me to do in my life. Would you pray and obey?" And I put a little response card in there and a self-addressed stamped envelope to return the response in. And I set the deadline for the fundraiser for the week before Easter because I had pastor's retreat in Branson the weekend before Easter. And by the way, every pastor wants everything done by Easter. I mean, that's your biggest, time of the year, biggest Sunday.
So how much time did you allow? Was it like a month then?
Okay, no. So I sent out the letter in January.
Okay.
And it was like early April when it ended.
Yeah.
So when the time frame for the fundraiser ended.
Yeah.
So I sent them all out, and I got some responses back this time, which was different than 17 years ago when I didn't get any back. And but I didn't open them, and I knew what they were because I had set the envelopes out, and so I took a little cardboard box, covered it in duct tape, and cut a slot in it, and I just put the envelopes in there. Did not look at them.
Man, that's incredible.
And oh, believe me, I was anxious. There's that other verse, and it tells you not to do that. Anyway, and I prayed. I put that box in my furnace room in my basement of my house, and I called that room my Holy of Holies. And every day I would go down there and I'd pray over that box and just pray, God, please let there be $100,000 in here. Please let there be $100,000 in here. And so finally the day of the deadline came, and I went in there one last time. And I mean, many times I I prayed on my face before God. I mean, I prayed in ways I'd never pray in front of anybody, you know. I was just wanted so badly for God to answer this prayer. So I pray one last time. I take the box, I take my pocket knife, cut it open, and I open the envelopes, and I look at the responses, and I total the checks that had come in. And when all was said and done, we had raised just a little over $11,000. Now, that's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, and it wasn't like I wasn't thankful for the $11,000, but that's a long ways from $100,000.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I just felt, okay, God has spoken. I believed this for 17 years, and I was wrong. Now, that's not easy, especially when it's like...
That's where your identity was too, right?
Oh, man. My identity was in, I am a man of God. God speaks to me. I speak to him. I speak his truth to people. This is who I am, you know? And I can't tell you the embarrassment that I already began to feel at that moment, because Pastor Rick told everybody he had ever met that God had called me to build a youth camp at Table Rock Lake. And now it was not going to happen. And I was so discouraged. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. I literally felt like someone had just kicked me in the stomach, you know? And so I headed down into what I call a pity party. Okay, I don't know if you ever had one of those, but no one ever comes but yourself, okay? You know, and I was just like, I can't believe this, God. This is awful. Everyone's going to think like I am not really a man of God because I told everyone you called me to do this, and now it's not going to happen, and I'm going to look so stupid, you know, and no one's going to believe me anymore. You know, all these thoughts just go through your head. And Satan loves to do that to us anyway, you know, and whether it's something like this or it's something else, you know, he loves to do that to us. And he was getting me into a serious pity party, I'll tell you that. And so I don't know why, to this day, why I did what I did next, but I just thought, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. Nothing. It's over, right? I'm going to call Windy Joe down there on that property and tell him that he would be happy and blessed in Jesus if he would just give me that property. Okay? And I got nothing to lose, you know, and Windy Joe, all I've ever heard from him is, oh, you religious peoples, you know, that's all I ever heard from him. So I call him up and you know, we start the small talk, and he's telling me, you know, about all the fish he's catching, you know, and
they're probably all this big too.
Yeah,
right?
Oh yeah, they're all this big, but in reality, they're whatever, not even keepers probably. And anyway, but you know, he's going through all this stuff, and I don't even have a chance to say to him, how about you'd be happy and blessed in Jesus just to give me this land, you know? And Windy Joe says this in his old hillbilly accent, you know, he goes, you know, when you and that feller was down here last fall, you got me and my wife a thinking. And we decided to sell the place, and looks like we got her sold. And I am just like, what? Joe, you were supposed to call me if you ever decided to sell this place. I mean, 8 separate years I stopped in there, 8 times. Gave him every contact piece of information.
I would not be happy. I'd be so mad.
I was mad. I'm already in the pity party, right?
Yeah.
Okay? So right now, if this preacher could have punched Windy Joe in the nose through the phone, I would have let him have it, right, in the name of Jesus. Anyway, and I'm like, Joe, you were supposed to call me. Why didn't you call me? And here's what he said to me, and this made me even more mad. He said, I didn't call you because I knew you didn't have any money. And it made me mad really for 2 reasons. One, he was right. Okay, and something's just not cool when Windy Joe is right. 2, no, I didn't have any money, but I just happened to know the one who has it all, you know? And I just was like, so then he tells me, and this is the first time I realized this, he didn't even own the land. His father-in-law in New Jersey owned the land, and he and his wife lived there and operated this little resort. And he said, my father-in-law's got a contract with an offer on the place, just waiting for him to sign it. As soon as he signs it and sends it in to the real estate agent in Shell Knob, it's a done deal. It's sold. It sounded like he was literally happy that we weren't going to have this land. I mean, I am furious, But what am I going to say? I said, oh, okay, thank you. You're an idiot. Goodbye. I didn't say the idiot part, but I wanted to. Anyway, so now I'm deeper in my pity party. I mean, it's really, really over now because we only raised $11,000, and then the very place where I was just certain God had told me we're going to build the camp, they decided to sell it, and it basically, for all purposes, is sold. And so then, what I did next, once again, I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to call Dave, the guy who was going to help, and looked at the land and all that with me, and just let him know the results of the fundraiser and what was happening with the land. And so I called Dave up, and I said, Dave, this is Rick. I just thought I would let you know that we only raised $11,000 in the fundraiser. And I wanted to say, and by the way, you didn't send in an envelope with anything. Dave didn't even respond to it. So I was a little disappointed with that, I guess, at the time. But I said, and I just called Windy Joe, and they decided to sell the property after we talked to him last fall. And he said, it looks like they got it sold. And you want to know what Dave had the audacity to say to me in that moment? Okay, I'm the preacher, right? Okay, he's a contractor. I'm the preacher, he's a contractor. I'm in the depths of a pity party right here, okay? I am having an all-time life crisis here, okay? And Dave has the audacity to say to me at that moment, well, I don't know what you're worried about. If God wants you to have it, you're going to have it. And I wanted to say back to him, I didn't, thank goodness. I wanted to say, and why don't you shut up, because I didn't want to hear it. Yeah. I didn't want to hear something spiritual right now. I'm in the depths of a mucky, messy pity party, And I said, yeah, I know you're right. Yeah, I just want to let you know, thank you, goodbye. So I get in my car, and I'm driving around St. Joe, and I don't want to see anybody. I mean, I am just bawling my eyes out. I literally can't believe this is happening to me. I'm even questioning whether I was even called into ministry at that point, Even after 17 years of what I would consider successful, really great ministry, I'm doubting everything. Satan is pounding a mud hole in the middle of my heart right now. And I'm driving around, I'm just bawling, I can't believe this, and my car's about out of gas, so I get gas, and I go in to pay for it, and I come back out, and my cell phone's beeping, like I have a message. And I listened to it, and it's Dave. He said, yeah, Rick, this is Dave. You got yourself a piece of property in southern Missouri. Give me a call. That's all it said.
Dang.
And I'm like, what? What is he talking about? So I call him up, and he said, yeah, you got yourself a piece of property in southern Missouri. And I'm thinking in my mind, southern Missouri, large landmass. Yeah. Okay, can you be more specific? What are you talking about? He said, can you deliver some earnest money to Shell Knob tomorrow? And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to Branson anyway for pastor's retreat. I can do that. He said, okay. He said, call this realtor. He'll give you the details down there, and stop by my office first thing in the morning. I'll give you a check. So I said, okay. So I hang up and I call this realtor in Shell Knob, and I said, hey, I'm Rick Pearson, and Dave told me to call you. And he said, oh, yeah, Mr. Pearson. He said, Dave has just offered 100% full asking price on the Pine Cove Lodge property. That's what they called it. Pine Cove Lodge, okay? Which is really crazy because there was no lodge, and there's one pine tree on the entire property, okay? But this is Windy Joe, right? Yeah. Pine Cove Lodge. Doesn't that sound awesome? Who doesn't want to stay at Pine Cove Lodge, right? I mean, and one pine tree was about 4 foot tall, and there was no lodge. Anyway, But that's what he called it. And I said, well, to the realtor, I thought it was sold. And he said, well, not technically. The owner in New Jersey does have a contract with the current offer on the property, but he hasn't signed it and returned it to me. So technically, it's not sold. And I said, well, did you call the owner and tell him there's a better offer to not sign it? And he goes, no, I'm not allowed to do that. He said, I cannot contact the owner about a new offer until the earnest money is in my hand. It's a Missouri real estate law. And I thought, that's the dumbest law I've ever heard of in my life. Right up there with the speed limit suggestions they have. Anyway, but so I'm like, well, I'm in St. Joe. I can't even get there. I'm 5 hours north. I can't get there till tomorrow afternoon with this earnest money check. I said, what if he faxes in that contract before I get there? And he said, it'll be sold and he will never know that there was another offer. Okay. And the Bible says, do not be anxious about anything, but with thanksgiving, prayer, and petition, present your request to God, okay? That is the dumbest verse in all of the Bible right there. I guarantee it, hands down. I'm like, are you kidding me? Don't be anxious about anything? I did not sleep that whole night. I mean, oh my goodness. All I could hear in my mind the whole night was that fax machine, printing out the contract at the real estate office in Shell Knob. Well, I get up early in the morning. I run to Dave's office. He hands me an envelope with this check in it, and I head for Shell Knob. Now, I'd made the trip many times, and it took 5 hours. I mean, because you have to go around or through Kansas City, and back then they didn't have, the interstate like 49 like they have now. And anyway, I made it in 3.5 hours. I figured it up once that I had to average right around 90 miles an hour to make it that fast. And thank the Lord, I did not see any law enforcement because I'd probably still be in jail if I had. So I do want to say that I did have to repent a little bit for my minor violations of the speed limit suggestions that they have.
Suggestions.
Yeah, they really aren't suggestions. And also, I had some kind of bad thoughts because I wanted heat-seeking missiles to blow up every little old lady from Arkansas that was in front of me going too slow. But I got it, 17 years is on the line here. Yeah. I feel like my life, my ministry, everything I've stood for, everything seemed to be on the line that day. Oh. It probably really wasn't, but in my mind it was.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think the same thing. Like, I would be so anxious about that. Like,
yeah.
I don't know how you couldn't,
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, no potty breaks, nothing on the way down. It was just like Mountain Dew and pedal to the metal. That's what it was. And so I get to the real estate office, and I run in there. I got this check in my hand, and I said, I'm Rick Pearson. I got a check from Dave for the Pine Cove Lodge property. Did the fax come in from the owner? And he said, no. And I handed him the check. And by 7 o'clock that evening, Dave had bought the very property that we had prayed on 17 years earlier. I mean, it's just it's just incredible. And I'll never forget when the realtor called me that night. I'm at pastor's retreat, and he called me and said he bought it. It's done. It's a done deal. And the owner really was not very nice even. Not only did Dave have to pay full asking price, which was way over the value at the time, way more than it was worth, the owner said, I don't want to pay all that property gains tax. So I'm going to let you pay half this year. Then you're going to pay me 8% interest on the remaining balance for a year, and then you can pay it off next year.
Oh, I see. So he did a partial owner carry.
Yeah. And if I were Dave Johnson, I'd be like, I'm not paying you 8% interest, whatever. But no, he said, no, whatever the owner wants, I have to have this property for this man's ministry. God had so put it on that man's heart, and he wasn't going to stop. And I got to tell you, one of the most amazing things was when Dave handed me the deed to the property. I'll never forget this moment. You know, when someone spends that kind of money, $285,000, and just gives it,
Yeah, that's crazy.
typically, there's little strings attached. You know, like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I want you to do this. Or I'm going to give you this, but I want this. Not one word like that from Dave. All he said to me, he looked me in the eye and he said, you go do for others like you did for my boy.
Wow. I have chills.
That's
all over,
it.
dude.
That's all he said. Oh, well, no, that's not true. He said one more thing. He said, by the way, I'm going to loan you $500,000.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, no, you're not. I mean, I didn't even know $500,000 existed in the whole wide world. And he goes, yes, you can't start a camp with $11,000. And I was like, you watch me, I will too. And he goes, no, I'm going to loan you this money. Now he said, you're going to pay me interest and you're going to pay me back, but I'm going to loan it to you so you can get started building your camp. And I was scared to death. I really was. But after watching all that God had done, and it just, I guess, gave me that sense of holy confidence. Okay, we're doing this. And so I resigned my church. And February 1st, 2001, my wife and I moved down and began building this ministry that today, here we are, almost 23 years later, we have reached more than 30,000 young men and women with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and continue to just answer the call that God has put on our lives.
So I actually was one of those kids. I think it's probably been, 10, 12 years ago that I went.
Wow.
But it was one of the most spiritual encounters I've ever had. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So,
well,
man.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very encouraging to me. Yeah. And camp it's just powerful. It's life-changing. And especially the way that we do camp, which is 100% biblically centered, Christ-centered. We do not compromise the truth in any way, shape, or form. We have groups that won't come anymore because of that. Mm-hmm. And then we have groups that do come because of that, because they want to hear the truth. They want someone real, and they want something real.
Absolutely.
And so we introduce them to a very real, loving, life-changing God. And it's just been the most amazing thing I've ever been a part of. The only regret that I have is I started it when I was 40. That's when it finally all came to fruition. I'm 63 now, and everything's harder at 63. I'll just tell you, it just is harder. But the passion in me has not died out one bit. And many people have asked me this recently, because the generation gap gets larger every year. Mm-hmm. I get older and the kids get younger, and they're like, Rick, so when you gonna call this thing quits? And my answer has been very clear from the Lord. When the passion fades, I will do something else, and that has not yet happened. So I'm going to keep going until the Lord tells me that, you're done. And even at that, what I mean by done is I won't probably be speaking as much or maybe running the camp. But I hope here's my goal, that I hope that even if Lord lets me live to 90 or 100 years old, I don't know, I want to be that pastor guy that is just on the campus, loving people, praying with people, sharing Christ with them, maybe even giving little direction to new youth pastors and things that really need it, Mm-hmm. So it's really been my life calling, and I'm so blessed and honored that I get to live it out. I literally get to live my dream.
Dang, that's amazing, man. Dang. So had that never happened, where do you think you would have been now? Do you think you would have still just been in ministry, or?
Probably so. Okay, I would have somehow recovered because of the grace and power of our God. I would have recovered from the deep pity party of that day. I don't know how. I don't humanly know how, but I know that our God is able. I would have probably recovered from that, and then continued pastoring. Like I said, things were going well in the church. It wasn't like, I needed to go do something else, but the calling would not leave me. And so therefore I was never really settled in my heart about it. Yeah. And so I guess probably that's what I would have done. Guess no way to really know.
Yeah. And then what about so how did you have the patience to not open the checks? Like, I don't understand how you would have waited.
I duct taped that box pretty good. So, if I'd had one, I'd put a padlock on it and gave someone else the key, Yeah. But I don't know what necessarily gave me the patience. I just felt led that this is how the Lord wanted me to do it. And I guess it allowed that period of those few months to really just be focused and prayerful, not knowing what was in there. If I'd have known what was in there, I might have been so discouraged, and given up before I ever made it to the end. I don't know. Yeah. But I just felt that's what God wanted me to do. And so I don't really have a reason for it other than I just knew that's what he wanted me to do. And he gave me the strength to not look in there. It's kind of like as a little kid, that present under the Christmas tree, you just want to know, but you got to hold off till Christmas.
Yeah. And then in your letter, did you say that you would cash the checks in around April?
I did put no, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So they probably did wonder. Oh my goodness, I never thought of that till now. I think I put in there that, the deadline is whatever it was, April 2nd or something like that. But I did not put in there, by the way, if you send a check, it won't be. No, I didn't. Because you know what? When I sent those letters out, I don't even know at that moment if I had decided not to look at them. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just know that at some point between feeling like I should do the fundraiser and actually send the letters out or them coming back in, somewhere in there, I must have decided before I got the first envelope back. But yeah, I just decided that's what I was going to do.
It's crazy how God had a bigger plan the whole time. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. You were super defeated. You gave up practically. You got the 11,000, and then you call that guy. Had you not called that guy, what would have happened? Because it probably would have sold.
Oh yeah, we would have never known it even came up for sale, and I would have stopped by there another time and realized that Wendy Joe wasn't there and someone else had it. And that's. And so once again, I don't really know why, because I knew there was 1 in a million chance ever that Wendy Joe would give me the property. But when you're that desperate, I guess you'll take the 1 in a million chance, because you know what? We serve a God that's bigger than the 1 in a million chance. Yeah. And I knew that deep down. It didn't feel like it at the time. It didn't feel that way. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that we serve a God that, he can beat 1,000,000 to 1 odds every single time. And I guess maybe that's why I decided, and part of it was just simple, just being practical. I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose here. And
you have a modern day ark story, basically. If you think about it like that.
Yeah.
There's probably a better example in the Bible, but that's literally what it you just had faith this whole time that it was going to work out.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
Even though it didn't make sense to Noah to build an ark when it had never rained before.
Yeah.
And everyone's making fun of him and all that. So I guess that's kind of true. I never thought about it that way, but yeah.
Man, that's just incredible. It's so cool that God did that.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I love to tell this story and I tell kids this at camp all the time, and this is so true. If God can do this through a nobody from Nowheresville, North Dakota, okay? I come from a divorced home. I come from some time in my life where I was far away from God and did things that to this day I'd give anything if I could take them back. how could God even call someone like me? If God can do this through the life of a nobody from Nowheresville, North Dakota, can you imagine what he could do through your life? Because, and I tell him this all the time, and I'll say it again to you, Jason, I see more potential when I look at you than I ever have seen when I look in the mirror. And I say that to these young people too, that if I can't even imagine what God could do through your life. And really, it's a matter of you just keep trusting and obeying. I know it's like an old hymn, trust and obey. There's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. There's so much truth in that. You have to keep trusting. You have to keep obeying and not give up. And so I say that to students, hundreds of them, several thousand every summer. Listen, don't give up. I know it may look like this thing is over, that God's never going to use you, that nothing good's ever going to happen. And that is just a lie of Satan. Mm-hmm. You just keep on going sometimes. And sometimes those valleys are really deep and they're really long. And then there's a desert down there and it's dry and it's hot and it's hard. Mm-hmm. But man, I got to tell you, when you reach the mountaintop, and you will, because our God is faithful, you will reach it. There is no feeling in the world like that of just watching God do what he promised to do. Mm-hmm. And so, I hope that this story encourages people that direction.
It definitely encouraged me. Like, that's for sure. There's definitely been times, you mentioned not feeling like you went and talked to all these people, you had this plan, but it didn't work out. I mean, obviously in the end it did, but I've had that many times. Like, I thought this is the business I'm going to do and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I felt the embarrassment of like, oh, it didn't work. I told all these people, like, it's just, I've been there. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. And lots of people say things, and I'm probably not going to get it quite right, but victory is just the result of a whole bunch of failures that you decided to not give up in, and that is so true. And I have asked the Lord many times, Lord, why did I have to wait till I was 40? Now I'm 63. Everything hurts, I got arthritis, and it's still a lot of hard work at the camp. It is, because we can't afford to pay someone to do everything. We got to try to do it ourselves. Why did I have to wait so long? And as I now, at 63, one thing great about being 63 is you have some perspective. Mm-hmm. You've lived long enough to develop some perspective. And I can now look back and see that every ministry experience in Topeka, in Dallas, Texas, in Oskaloosa, Iowa, in Indianapolis, Indiana, in St. Joseph, Missouri, was vital to prepare me for what God had ultimately called me to do.
Man.
And seriously, if I hadn't, oh my goodness, Jason, we could sit here for the rest of this day, and I could tell you story after story after story of things that happened to me in ministry that might cause you just to say, why did you even keep on? It was so difficult, it was so hurtful and painful, and yet every one of those things now, I get to look back and go, but that's when God was forming me. He was strengthening me. He was molding me more into the person that I needed to be in order to accomplish this camp ministry. And so, yes, I wish I could have done it at 20 instead of 40. Mm-hmm. But I know that every life experience in there, God was working in and through preparing me. And I would have never made it. Oh my goodness, there's no question. I would have never made it without those experiences. So God knew what he was doing. And he is not slow in keeping his promises. Sometimes we understand slowness. He is always faithful and he's right on time. And if anything, the only problem here is the fact that maybe I'm just so stinking slow that it took God 17 years. I'm hard-headed, I'm stubborn, whatever. Maybe if I weren't so much that way, he could have prepared me in 5. I don't know. Doesn't matter now. All I know is that what I went through and the time period was absolutely necessary for me to be successful in what God called me to do.
There's just so many things in my life that like it's just connecting that same dot. It's like there's things I want to do, and it's not happened yet, and I feel like I feel like it's for one God's timing, but also I have to become that person that can handle those things too.
Absolutely.
So
well, you're very wise to realize that, because a lot of people, they don't, I'm afraid, and they just flat get discouraged and defeated. And I have seen people walk away from God that I would have never, ever guessed they would have done that. They got discouraged. And you know what? No matter what, I don't care how successful you become in life, it's still a battle. It's still a spiritual battle. Satan wants your soul. And he's not going to quit. He does not quit. And but I'm also here to testify to the fact that our God is greater every time. And I cheated and I read the end of the book and we win, man. We win big time, okay? So really this journey is just a journey of growing and following Christ. And yes, it's a battle. It is. And we often get discouraged in this battle. Oh my goodness. I know I got greatly discouraged so many times. But it was just my daily commitment to God's word and to prayer and to just trying to become the man that God had called me to be. You cannot, you're going nowhere without God's word and prayer. You're not doing it. I'm telling you, you can have a beautiful brand new Corvette sitting out there with absolutely no fuel in it, and that car's going nowhere. Okay, oh man, it looks awesome, it's amazing, it's pretty, but it's not accomplishing anything. And time in God's word and in prayer and that developing that deep interpersonal love relationship with your Savior is absolutely vital to success. That's how I feel about it. And that's what kept me going through that time. Now, I'm not here telling you, don't think for 1 second I'm going like, oh, look at me, I'm like super Christian. That is so not true. Man, there are times I am on my face before God begging for forgiveness because of the stupid things that I've done or said or thought or whatever. And, but you know what? The Lord in His grace picks me back up and I keep on going. And even today at the camp, and here we are at Camp Table Rock, I think it's been 8 years now. 8 years ago when I paid I paid Dave back after 1 year because I got a loan from the Arvest Bank.
Okay.
And then paid on that for, I don't remember how many years, but, and then 8 years ago, well, you take 8 off of 23 and you're around, so it probably took me around 15 years. Yeah. And I paid the camp off.
Nice.
And we don't owe a dime to anyone. And we're finally building the chapel that I've always wanted to build there. And you remember the current chapel, it's our everything building. It's our kitchen, it's our dining hall, it's our game room, it's our snack shack, it's our worship room, it's everything's in there. And we are, to this point, building that chapel, a $1.5 million project without borrowing money.
Holy cow, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, we're not quite there yet, but I have no reason to doubt. I am just like, God's got this for sure.
Yeah.
And we are probably 80% complete right now, and it'll be ready for when camp starts next May. I'm so excited about that.
And it's a beautiful project. Like, it's a beautiful building.
Yeah, it is. I'm just amazed every time I look at it and every time I go inside of it. And we built it on the side of the hill overlooking the lake, and the front is all glass with a cross inlaid in the middle of it. And it is just, no one's going to listen to me when I'm speaking. They're not. They're just going to be so enamored with the view and the beauty out there of God's creation. But, okay, I just want them to experience God, and I guess that's how they do it. That's okay. But, yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. And, oh, my goodness, I could go on and on of the miracles that God has done there, brought us to where we are today. every boat we have a fleet of 11 Mastercraft boats. Okay, now they're not new, but they're nice.
Yeah.
And I remember the day thinking we would never own one, and just to watch how God works. And I'm telling you, be faithful in your tithe, be faithful in your offering, be faithful in your life, and watch God take that and use it.
That's one of the number one things I tell people is tithing. Like it's like you can't 1 + 1 = like 10. Like it just it doesn't make
in
any
God's
sense.
math it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but it's biblical and it works.
It absolutely works. And I can attest to that back in days when I didn't have $100 to my name.
Yeah.
And I had 2 little kids at home, and I put that tithe in the offering plate every Sunday.
Yeah.
In faith, and God never let me down.
So
ever.
for me, I started when I was working at the pawn shop. I was just working part-time, so like a Saturday a week. So I'd make $30 or $40 for the, working that Saturday. So it'd be $3 or $4 depending on $30 or $40.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, like in those days it was like really just gas money, but then it's like, well, crap, if I give this, then I might not be able to, get everything where I needed to be.
Yeah.
But I was faithful in the little things, and then God's blessed that
Yes.
in my mind. It's so
Absolutely. There's no doubt. Yeah. And so at camp, I try to share this with all my staff. I hire around 25 college students every summer to work there. And I tell them the story, about when we first started there. We didn't even have a truck, but eventually someone gave us this old ghetto. I call it the ghetto truck because it was ghetto. I mean, I think it was like a 1987 F-150, so hammered out, rusted everywhere, but it was a truck and we needed it. And you want to know what I did with that old F-150? I vacuumed it and I washed it and I changed the oil in it. And people they were kind of laughing at me like, you take care of that like it's a good truck. It's a ghetto truck. And I'm like, yeah, but God gave it to us. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Now today, we have 2 really nice Ram 2500s, and nowhere near ghetto level at all.
Yeah.
I mean, just they're beautiful trucks.
Yeah.
And the same way with the boat. When we started out, we had one old crappy 1984 IMP boat, okay? It was broken down all the time. It's just, it was so frustrating. But I took care of it. I worked on it. We cleaned it always, we kept it as nice as we could. And look what we have today. Whatever God blesses you with, don't get your mind or your eyes over here like, oh, I wish I had that. Okay? I would love a Ram TRX truck, okay? I would love that.
Yeah.
No, I don't. You know what? I am so thankful for what God has given us right now. And when we can do that and be thankful for that and serve God in that, He takes care of everything else. Mm-hmm. And I've just watched Him prove that to me over and over and over again. When I look at the place where the summer staff used to have to live for the summer, I mean, it was so bad. It was this old crappy trailer house, and if you didn't step on the beams, you would fall through the floor.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I mean, that's how bad it was. But it's what we had. Mm-hmm. You know what? And they came and they sacrificed and they gave, and then now, they come and they get to stay in a really nice lounge, with flat screen, 65-inch flat screen TV, and a full kitchen and laundry room and couches and nice beds and air conditioning. And I'm just like, so I tell them, you will take care of that. You will keep that clean. You will respect it. You have no idea the price it was paid to get that for you, And so I'm really trying to instill this sense of value in these young people, because it's going to serve them well throughout their life, I believe.
Yeah. If you're faithful in the little things, God will bless you with bigger things.
Oh, man.
And so
that is so true.
Yesterday, it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, me and my wife were driving by one of our first rental properties. It was actually our first rental property. And I remember as we drove by it, like, I think we spent $500 fixing it up when we first bought it. And then when we were going to sell it to put it on the market, we put another $500 into it. And I think we replaced the back door and did just a few small things. And that we were so frugal with that $500, so it went pretty far. But man, I just remember like it was such a struggle for that little $500.
Right.
And now like God's blessed us with so much more, but we were faithful in those small things.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's just really cool to and I don't know how many, like 5 years ago, maybe 7, 6, somewhere in there. Yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's just weird to think, where we were there and now where we're at. So.
Absolutely. And you are blessed to be able to look back and realize that. And I'm so happy to hear you realize it was because of these things that God has blessed me today. Mm-hmm. And I hope that people listening to this podcast will realize, you know what? Yeah, it's going to be because of these things, me trusting God in the little things and doing the little things, that's going to result in down the road success. Yeah. I tell my staff this, that I hire every summer, these young college students. If you will put these principles that I will teach you into practice, I will guarantee you success in whatever you do in life, whether that's ministry or finance or whatever field you feel that God wants you to go into. If you will put these principles, not because they're Rick Pearson's, they are God's principles. Yep. They are biblical, and they work every single time. Mm-hmm. There's never a time that God fails. Now listen, it may not happen on the timetable, as obviously we've heard about, that we think it should, but it will if we keep trusting and following God. These college students pull up in these vehicles, their cars, to camp. And I can tell immediately by looking at their vehicle how they feel about these things, how they're treating things that God has blessed them with. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, it is so nasty. You look in these cars, you could plant potatoes in their floorboard because, there's dirt that thick and garbage and just stuff everywhere. And I'll say to them, what is the most expensive thing you own that's worth the most money? And they think, they rarely ever even say their car. And I'm like, what about your car? Oh, yeah. That would be, and as a college student, that you probably don't own another thing that it costs more or is more valuable than your car.
Yeah.
Why do you treat it like that? Would you like to have a better car someday? Oh, yeah. Well, I tell you what, I don't think I'd treat the one that you have the way you're treating it then.
Yeah.
And I'll actually, as a ministry to my staff, I'm tired, I'm hot, it's whatever, but I'll take their car and I will clean it out. I will change the oil. Sometimes I have to fix certain things, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I did this because I wanted to bless you. Now I want you to keep this looking this way, realizing that someday you're going to need to sell this or trade it in, mm-hmm. and it's going to be worth a lot more if you take care of it. God has blessed you with this. And I tell them the ghetto truck story. We started with this. Look at what we got now. Yep. Okay, we took care of what God gave us. Look where He gave us now. Yep. There's sound principles there in honoring God with whatever you're at, or whatever He's given you and wherever you're at. And He blesses that.
So, Rick, what's one of the best lessons you've learned in life?
Oh, my goodness. That is tough. I guess that God never fails.
Ooh, that's really
good. Even when everything in your humanness says, this is not going to work, mm-hmm. if God is in it, it works. And so that'd probably be one of the best things I've ever learned, is that God just doesn't fail. And so knowing that should give us the confidence to move forward in serving Him and answering His call upon our lives, because He doesn't fail. Mm-hmm. It's not within His ability. So, I suppose that would be it.
What advice would you give someone that really wants to succeed in life and business?
I like how you said
whatever
that.
career or whatever.
Yeah, I like how you said in life, and business is just part of life.
Yeah.
So to succeed in life and in business or in anything you do, put God first. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added onto you as well. And so follow God's principles. Like we were talking, I tell all these college students that I hire each summer, put these biblical principles into your life. Put them into practice. You will be successful. And the measure of a man and his success is not how much money he makes or how big his house is or how cool his car is or how famous or popular he is, how many followers he has on social media. That's not it. I really believe that when we stand before God someday, only two things will matter. And they're these two things: that you knew Christ and that you made him known.
Yeah.
That you knew Christ and you made him known. I am certain beyond all doubt, reading God's word and understanding it to whatever degree God's allowed me to at this point, he's never going to ask you, what church did you go to? How high of position did you reach in your organization? What did your 401k look like? How big was your house? How many touchdowns did you score when you were in high school football? Those are all big things at the time, right? Mm-hmm. But it's going to matter that we knew him and that we made him known, because that means others are going to be there in heaven with us. So that's how I try to live my life, and that's what I would recommend for anyone. Do you want to be successful? That's how you measure success.
One of the things I started thinking about recently in the last month or so, if I talk to a person a day and just ask them, can I pray for you about anything? Or, maybe the Holy Spirit calls me to go and talk to them about him specifically, stuff like that. That's 365 people a year that I reach. But if I talk to 3, that's over 1,000 people I'd reach a year. Yeah. So some days I don't talk to anybody. Sometimes I talk to 5 people or 7 people. Yeah. So it's really cool to, I don't know, I don't want to put the pressure to always do it, because if I force myself to do it, it's just not going to come off as natural and stuff. Right. But whenever I feel called, there's been some really incredible talks I've had with people over the last month. Yeah. And so I don't know what God's, I'm 27. I don't know what God's full calling is for my life yet, but I know that I'm supposed to go and further his kingdom somehow. Right. So.
You know what? If you're open to that and daily seeking him, that plan will unfold. And you might be my age before you get to look back and really see how it all did unfold, but that'll be a great blessing for you. But just be faithful each day. You know what? And when you wake up each morning, you don't even know at that moment who God might put in your life that day. Yeah. You know what? It might be the checkout person at Walmart. Mm-hmm. Oh, they got self-checkouts now. Anyway, but they used to. It might be the person at the gas station or whatever, someone you do business with. You never know. So there's been days when that person is someone that I see walking along the highway in the pouring rain. Mm-hmm. What is happening? I'll stop and pull over and let them in, which is hard because I keep my truck so perfectly clean. It's hard, but no, that person is more important than this truck. Yeah. And so sometimes it's that, or, one thing I like to do, this is just a thing that I like to do. I'll be back when they did not have self-checkout at Walmart, okay? So you'd wait in line, and there's a person in front of you. It might be this young mother with 3 little kids, And this, I can't tell you how many times this has happened, a number of times. And they're ringing up her items, and they get to a certain point, and she's like, oh, okay, we got to stop there. I need you to put that back. And I can't get the rest of these things. And sometimes I'm looking at like there's still baby formula in that cart, there's still diapers or whatever, something. And I'll step up and say, ring them up. Yes, you're getting all of that. No, sir, I don't have the money. I can't do that today. Yes, you can. And I'll take my credit card and I'll pay for the whole works. No, I'm not saying that like, oh, look at me. Dude, I'm telling you, the blessing that floods into my soul at that moment, and to see the look on their face, and I'll just say something like, I just want you to know that I want God to bless you today. And I want to say to you, make sure these babies are in church. You make sure you get them in church. And, and they'll look at me like, oh, yes, sir, or whatever. But, it's just little things like that we can do. Sometimes it's just an encouraging word to somebody, just a smile even, walking down the aisle at Walmart and just to smile at that person. You can't believe what that does sometimes. I know what it does to me, because normally, they're like,
yeah,
you got this, or they're this, you got their face stuck in here, so they don't even notice you're alive. Just little things like that, I think, really make a difference. And I'm really happy to hear you say that you have that in your mind, like if just one person a day. Just think over the course of your life what that adds up to be. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just maybe a little seed planted, Or sometimes I tell people we pick a rock out of the soil, or we till the soil a little bit, or we water it a little bit, or whatever. Any part of that process that we are in someone coming to Christ is vital. Yeah. And just as important as the person. Sure, I love to be the guy that kneels and prays at the altar, or prays with the person wherever we are, that they receive Christ. Yes, I love that. That's the harvest. Everyone wants to be the harvester. Yeah. But you know how many people were involved in that process before that point? Just as important. Yeah. And so I think we need to keep that in mind.
Dang. That gave me a lot to think about too, so thank you for that. What legacy do you want to leave? Like, it could be, whatever you think of.
I guess I want to be remembered as someone who loved God and loved to share Him with others. So there's a song by Casting Crowns called Life Song. I don't know if you've ever heard it.
I probably have, but I can't think of what it is.
So maybe listen to it later today. Just Life Song by Casting Crowns. But it talks about letting our life song sing. And I just want a legacy left that, that I love God and I love to share Him with others. And I just hope and pray and believe that when I stand before the throne of God someday, that I will be celebrating there with hundreds or maybe thousands of people that somehow I was a part of their faith journey, and resulting in us celebrating before the throne of God someday. That
would be so amazing. And then how can people connect with you?
Okay, so I am not a social media guy. So I do have a Facebook page that I haven't changed or anything in probably whenever Facebook came out. Okay, I don't even know how long ago. So if you instant message me, I think that's what you do on Facebook, Messenger or something?
Messenger.
Okay, yeah, you can go 6 months before I find that, okay? I'm just telling you. I have chosen, I got the Facebook page because I wanted to reconnect with classmates from high school, all those years ago, and I don't know where they are, so that's kind of my way to do that a little bit. But because of the drama and all the things that social media and the damage that it causes, not just to kids, but to people, I kind of choose to just stay out of there a little bit. So, but you can connect with me through email for sure. And that is just rick@camptablerock.com. Pretty simple, rick@camptablerock.com. You can look up Rick Pearson on Facebook. You'll find me, and you could instant message me, but I'm just telling you, you may not get to me for quite a while. Or you could reach me at our camp office number as well, which is 417-858-9222. 417-858-9222. And I love hearing from people, and any part of your faith journey that I can help you with, I certainly want to do that if I'm able to do it.
And do you have a final message for our audience?
Wow. Stand strong. Stay true. Trust God. Don't give up no matter what. He is faithful.
I love that.
He is faithful, and He will see you through.
Well, thank you guys for watching the Kurima Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.